Welcome to the Montana DEQ educational course for safe fueling of underground petroleum tanks. This is a web-based course with a quiz at the end. After passing the quiz, you will have the opportunity to print out a certificate showing that you passed the course. This course is for educational purposes and not intended to replace or be a substitute for safety training. This educational course is not intended to be a complete presentation of all problems and issues that may arise. Basically, it is our goal that all of the correct fuel be placed in the correct tank, safely. Always chalk your wheels and set the parking brake. Having your truck roll away from you would be quite embarrassing. Not to mention, it could lead to spilling fuel and even causing a fire. Always barricade your fuel delivery area. Cones are your friend. It won't stop a car, but it might give you warning when someone comes too close. Alternatively, if you don't use cones or barricade your work area, anything that happens could be considered your fault. Check for Montana operating tags. All tanks should have one. If you are delivering to a tank for the first time and it does not have a tag, investigate further. That tank might have been taken out of use since your last delivery. Before delivering fuel, check the operating permit for the facility. Make sure the facility has a current operating permit. Look at the operating permit closely and see if there are any tanks with the tank status "Do not fill." Be sure you know which tanks you can't fill. Before delivering fuel, you must check the Do Not Fill list on DEQ's Underground Storage Tank website. The website address is listed on this slide. Any tank on the Do Not Fill list may not have fuel delivered to it. If you have any questions, always call someone at the UST program. Delivering fuel to a tank that is not permitted is an expensive mistake and a serious violation. Don't do it. Always check the product level of the tank before you begin dropping fuel. Since 95% of facilities in Montana have ATGs, print out a current inventory. Sticking the tank and comparing the inches from the stick to the inventory printout can often eliminate a drop into the wrong tank, or the wrong fuel into the right tank. It also allows you to check to make sure that the tank is empty enough to hold the fuel that you are delivering. Remember, tanks should never be filled all the way full. Use 90% as the maximum level to safely fill a tank. We all know about the old cowboy saying about 10 pounds of the horse byproduct. Always make sure you are not dropping too much fuel into the tank. If the amount of fuel dropped plus the amount currently in the tank is over 90% or 95%, you might end up with an overfill situation. Before you drop your fuel load, make sure you know what overfill protection is at the site. Just because you see a drop tube shut off and an alarm doesn't mean they don't have ball float vent restrictors. If in doubt, look up the facility summary sheet from the UST website or contact the UST program directly. High-level alarms are programmed to go off when the product in any tank reaches 90% of its full volume. However, if you are filling 2 or more tanks at a time, the alarm will only go off once. This can hide a second or even third overfill. Most tanks in Montana use a drop tube shutoff device in the fill riser of an underground tank to make sure that the tank does not get overfilled. These are set to shut off the flow of fuel at 95% of tank capacity. The ball float vent restrictor is used to cut off the air going out of the tank through the vent piping. If the air in the tank cannot escape, fuel cannot flow into the tank. However, if the tank top penetrations are not airtight, the vapor and fuel will start coming out of the ATG risers and extra risers once the fuel level rises to 90%. Check the facility summary sheets on DEQ UST's website for overfill protection information for all the tanks in Montana. Since sites can have more than one form of overfill protection, it's a good idea to check out the facility summary sheets to see what you are dealing with. The above table shows the proper delivery methods for each type of overfill protection. This chart will let you know if your delivery method is compatible with the tank that you are filling. Pressurized delivery is never allowed with a tight fill connection in the presence of a ball float vent restrictor or a drop tube shutoff device. When a tank is full and the drop tube valve slams shut, hydraulic line shock can increase the pressure in the delivery hose and cause it to pop off the fill adapter or even burst the hose. When a tank is full and the ball float restrictor closes the vent piping, the pressure in the tank can quickly pass the 5 psi maximum and blow welds and seams in the tank, causing a catastrophic release. Imagine a full 10,000 gallon tank emptying out of a split seam in just minutes. Gravity feed delivery consists of a tight fill connection at the fill port and allowing the fuel to enter the tank using gravity to push the fuel from the tanker to the underground tank. All three types of overfill protection are effective with this type of delivery. Always make sure that the fill adapter is tight before connecting the drop elbow. Gravity feed delivery cannot be used with tanks that use ball float vent valves for overfill protection. If a delivery reaches the 90% level that a ball float vent valve is installed at, the vent will be closed off. This will pressurize the tank and piping due to the weight of the fuel coming into the fill from the delivery truck. The pressure only has one outlet, the air eliminator in the dispenser suction pump. The fuel will spill out of the air eliminator all over the ground. Some smaller trucks or wagons sometimes use a pumped delivery using a large gas nozzle to deliver fuel into underground and above ground tanks. This is okay for above ground tanks as they don't typically have drop tube shutoffs or vent restrictors. However, if you use a large nozzle with a 2 through 3 foot nozzle extension on it, it will hold open any drop tube flap or valve and allow the tank to be overfilled. Or, if you have a drop tube vent restrictor, you will have the fuel spray up out of the fill pipe once the level increases to 90% and closes off the vent. During dual hose delivery, you are dropping fuel from different compartments on the transport into the same tank. As the fuel level increases, the ball float vent restrictor will close off the vent, stopping fuel flow into the tank, unless one of the compartments empties before the other one. Then the fuel will back up into the hose and truck compartment that was empty, or it will come out of the fill port once the empty hose is disconnected. That is why ball float restrictors are not allowed on tanks with dual fill deliveries. When using a coaxial drop elbow, with one hose dropping fuel and the second hose transferring vapor back into the transport, you cannot depend on a ball float vent restrictor to stop the flow of fuel at 90%. When the vent is closed off, fuel is still able to be dropped into the tank because the vapor recovery hose acts as an open vent. If too much fuel is put into the tank, the fuel will take the path of least resistance and go back into the transport compartment. If the fuel drop is more than 100% of the tank's volume, both the fill and vapor hoses will be filled with fuel. At that point, you will have to wait for the product in the tank to be sold to under 100% before you can even remove the drop elbow. That could take some time at some stations. It used to be standard practice to put a shortened gauge stick into the fill port to keep the drop tube shutoff valve from closing when it reached its activation point. Now, we know how dangerous that can be. On a 10,000 gallon tank, and with a drop rate of between 300 through 400 gallons per minute of fuel going into the tank, it would only take a little more than a minute to go from 95% full to an overfill situation with no indication that it has taken place. At this point, tank risers are filling up, vent lines are being filled with product, and all of the tank top bungs will be in fuel. If you find sticks in the fills when you arrive at the site, notify your dispatcher and the station owner of what you found. Then remove the sticks and dispose of them appropriately. If dual point vapor recovery is installed on a tank, you must use a vapor recovery elbow and a hose during filling. These are installed on stations that meet certain throughput criteria for selling gasoline. If the air in an underground tank that is being filled has nowhere to go, the fuel cannot enter the tank. If the pressure vent caps are the only way that vapor can escape the tank, it will slow down the filling rate of the tank dramatically. One huge reason to use vapor recovery properly. If a vapor drop elbow is not installed on the stage 1 outlet, the vapor, which is heavier than normal air, can pool and be ignited by many means. This is especially dangerous on hot days with no wind. Don't be fooled. Just because you can't see vapors doesn't mean there is no danger. Remember, fuel vapor is invisible and highly ignitable. Thank you for taking our fuel delivery education course. Print out your certificate after you pass the quiz.